Susanne Schödel. She's been flying high for years now, but does so quietly. Two-time world gliding champion in the 15-meter class, multiple world record holder for speed and distance, for example in 2013 in Namibia as the first woman in the world to glide over 1,107 kilometers. German champion in 2010, member of the German national team from 2004 to 2013. She not only has a license to glide, but also for motorized flight and ultralight aircraft. Her home airport is Hahnweide in southwest Germany. Back on the ground, she's very busy right now, with measurement systems for air and water focusing on gauging greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Before that, she was helping out in various leadership positions at charitable non-profit and government organizations, such as Germany's Federal Chancellery, the State of Hesse's Social Ministry, the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Foundation, and the Fédération Aéronautique Internationale, headquartered in Lausanne, Switzerland. Welcome, Susanne Schödel.
Guten Tag, Frau Schödel.
Hello, Miss Schödel.
Hello, Mr. Schmidt.
So pleased to have you here today. And you flew in safely?
Yes. Weather made it a bit difficult, but it worked out.
Yes. And then you use our watch for this?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you use it?
Well, this Sinn watch, this lovely one here, has been my companion for many years. It's very important for me to be able to tell time easily and properly all the time. And this watch is just really very good for that. And something I do again and again is activate the stopwatch when I take off on a glide. And then I basically always know how many hours I've been in the air. So when you're doing longer distances, it's important to know how many hours you've been up there, how long you still have, and when you perhaps have to turn around and fly home.
When you fly across a time zone, do you use the second time zone?
Just on a flyover, no. It's never happened to me yet that I've flown over a time zone, at least not in a glider. But the UTC function is simply helpful, because we always report our flight times in UTC. So the local time is not entered into the logbook, instead the UTC. And right now we have a little before 11 and UTC is then a bit before 9, so 2 hours back.
2 hours back.
And then I always know at once what time I have to enter. That's really helpful.
The date is also on it.
Exactly, it all fits.
Yes, it all fits. And I'm so happy that you've always been satisfied with our watch. And we've done something new. The 103 SA-G chronograph. The SA stands for sapphire crystal glass because we have it on both sides. We've used sapphire crystal on the front and back and covered the whole with sapphire glass that, if you look closely, is domed. This makes the chronograph appear flatter. The process to make this high-domed glass is extraordinarily complex as we first take a solid blank and then carefully grind and polish it to create this prestigious high-domed glass. Let me show it to you.
Yes. Yes, wonderful.
Yeah.
And the G stands for this subtle green.
Yes.
It's limited to 500 pieces. The mechanism here comes from a small manufacturer in La Chaux-de-Fonds, Switzerland, Concepto, a company, and I know the owner, we have great confidence in. The case is produced in our own factory in Glashütte, Saxony, Germany. And it is synonymous for high technical demands, utmost quality. But of course, development, assembly, mounting, final testing and regulating, that it works flawlessly, that all takes place in-house.
Yes.
Design, too.
Yes.
Also, using it, you know that from others, from your own watch. Here you activate the chronograph and stop and back. That works here the same way. We have a day-date display, and you can measure short time elapsing up to 12 hours here with a chronograph.
Und
It can also be read at night, of course, but you also know that from yours. So, in that respect, the functionalities of the watch, as far as readability is concerned, are about the same. Otherwise, you can use the rotating bezel to bookmark times.
By the way, I once had a watch from another manufacturer that had a bright dial and relatively bright hands. And that was totally useless for flying. So that makes a big difference that my dark dial has bright hands on it, because that's immediately visible. But when you're sitting in full sunlight, you're sitting in a glider virtually unprotected.
Ah, good to know.
A dark dial is truly the right choice for that.
Look at this.
Thank you. And the green has worked out exceedingly well. It also reminds me of Namibia, by the way, of my long-distance flights in Namibia.
You set a record, didn't you?
Yes, several. But I find the last one particularly special. It's the one for 1,107 kilometers on a single flight.
So you have to deal with thermals there, you know, when air rises up somewhere.
Yes. So as we're talking about Namibia here, the colour reminds me of Namibia. In Namibia, you've got a whole lot of the Kalahari. Everything is red sand there. Then there are always these water holes, sort of like water tanks that are reliable sources of thermals. You're flying during the morning hours, so as the thermals begin, you're basically flying from waterhole to waterhole.
The air rises high there?
It does. And later in the day it becomes cloudy, so you're no longer looking down to the ground, but up to see where the clouds are, and then you fly towards the clouds. Those are the same kind of fleecy, cirrocumulus clouds we have here, the best kind of clouds, and they can be quite large and powerful. The darkest part of them is usually where you find the best lift.
You can also fly against the wind, can't you?
Oh, of course. You fly with the wind and then have to fly back to the airfield you started from, so you fly against the wind to do so. And time always plays an important role in this.
Is the aircraft heated at all?
No. So in the summer it's very hot and in winter really cold.
I just wanted to say, our watch will work.
Oh, I'm very sure of it.
How high do you fly?
My highest flight altitude with thermals was 6,000 meters once.
But when you are at 6,000 meters high, you don't need an oxygen mask?
Oh yes, that's really interesting. Commercial aviation sets the aircraft cabin air supply at 2,500 meters usually, and every person reacts differently to this depending on when one needs more oxygen again. You can measure oxygen saturation, and we once did tests in the national team and had measuring devices along. We found out that 5 pilots each reacted completely differently. For instance, I need oxygen early on. I'm really happy when starting at 2,500 meters. I already take in a little extra oxygen because my concentration then remains better. Others hold out until 3,000 to 4,000 meters without using oxygen.
What I heard once from aircraft service staff was that some passengers find that their watch glass flies off in the lower air pressure.
Really?
Really?
But those were certainly not Sinn watches, no way.
That's just what I wanted to say. That can't happen with Sinn watches. They are low pressure resistant.
Yes.
Mr. Sinn said, everyone comes back down.
Yes.
That's actually reassuring.
I know the saying, and there are a lot of similar adages. There are many bold pilots, but not many old pilots. That was back in the early days of aviation, when pilots sometimes did not get so old. And it shows the significance of aviation at its beginnings, when it meant taking certain risks. We still take risks today, but we have technology that's much more advanced now, and have safe aircraft and equipment and different training too.
And I've noticed that for many pilots, safety is everything, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
You check through everything once, again, and then, if need be, a second time. Does that also make itself evident in daily life?
I also find that gliding is a way of life. Gliding perhaps even more so than motorized flight, because you just don't have an engine in your glider. You can't just give a little more gas to it. I have to gain a bit more altitude again, but first I have to think a bit ahead and be able to judge the weather situation. You always have to adjust to something new. No flight is like the last, and safety is where it all starts and ends. This means before a flight, check the aircraft thoroughly, whether all the connections are okay, whether all the rudders are working. You usually do that together with another fellow flyer. The instruments have to be set right, check the time, know what the weather is like, know when the sun sets. All these things, it's all really very complicated.
Have you ever had a panicky situation where you thought you were not going to get back to the airstrip?
Well, I wouldn't call it panic. It's more of an adrenaline situation when you notice your pulse starting to race and you harness all your senses again and concentrate absolutely on the flight at hand. For example, just when you come in low and have to land somewhere and not return to your own home airstrip, that's when you have to search out an appropriate outside landing strip and then make all the right decisions. And clearly I've done stuff like that, where I then had to sit for a while in the aircraft and first breathe in deeply and tell myself it all worked out, but it was a bit exciting.
And when no posts are standing around?
Sure, and that the landing went well. And with a glider, you already see it here, below it there is a landing gear that can't be pulled in. Newer aircraft all have retractable landing gear. And then there's still the question before landing, safety is everything. You go through a landing check, meaning you have to look that you're belted in, that the altimeter is set right, radio contact is working, and then you put down the landing gear. But it does happen that the landing gear doesn't go down, and then you have to land without it. That works. And then people say there are two kinds of pilots, those who have always landed with gear and those who have already landed without it. And that has happened to me, so I've already landed without gear, exactly.
Landed without gear, slips and slides a bit, gets a bit bumpy.
Yeah, it was a sandy field, a competition, and on approach to the airfield I noticed I wouldn't make it over the green forest. And then I found myself a sandy field, a potato field, and then I landed. Normally, after the landing, drop to a surface that's okay and the glider just remains horizontal. It's all part of gliding. And I really have to say, Sinn watches have always been part of it for me. So I always wear a Sinn watch when flying, and it's just part of what I do. So in a sense, I feel just deeply connected to you, I have to say.
Miss Schödel, thank you very much for being here, for visiting us here in the watch city of Frankfurt. Have a good flight back.
Yes, thank you.
Visit us again soon.
I would be pleased to. I'm always happy to come here, and I'm so glad that we've come together again after this time and that we can stay in touch.
Thanks, sure.
Thanks.